In the heart of the Zinari Empire, where stars were mapped like roads and planets were ruled by ancient laws, every citizen was born with a gift and a curse. It was called the soul mark, a glowing symbol etched into the skin at birth. The soul mark remained dormant until the moment its owner met their true soulmate. When that happened, the mark would flare to life in radiant light, impossible to hide, undeniable to all. It was a tradition as old as the empire itself, respected across cultures, feared by those who never found their match. For Lyra Vera, it had never burned. Not once in her 23 years. She was the daughter of a respected diplomatic family, trained in language, culture, and interstellar etiquette. She had traveled to dozens of worlds, met scholars, warriors, artists, and nobles from every corner of the galaxy. And yet, her soul mark remained dark. Some whispered she was broken. Others said fate simply hadn't found her yet. But Lyra had begun to wonder if she was meant to be alone. That changed on a dusty little planet orbiting a quiet yellow sun, a place known to its native species as Earth. The Zinari delegation had come for a cultural exchange, part of an effort to better understand humanity in a young, chaotic, and oddly fascinating species. Humans were loud, emotional, and often messy, but they were also incredibly creative, resilient, and full of surprises. Lyra had been assigned to observe and report, not expecting anything more than routine. She walked through the human spaceport, surrounded by the smells of strange foods and the sounds of music that didn't follow any logical rhythm. Everything about Earth felt wild. Then she saw him. He wasn't tall or imposing like the warriors of her homeworld. He wasn't dressed in fine robes or speaking in poetic riddles like the diplomats she knew. He was just a man in a simple jumpsuit, crouched beside a broken air filter, muttering to himself as he tightened some bolts. His hair was short and messy, his skin slightly tanned, and there was grease on his hands. But when he looked up and caught her gaze, something inside her shifted. Her breath caught. Then, without warning, a burning sensation flared across her arm. Lyra gasped and took a step back, eyes wide. Around her, the other Zinari froze. A few gasped. One fell to their knees. On her forearm, glowing bright blue and pulsing like a heartbeat, was her soul mark. It had activated. Everyone stared at her, then turned to look at the human still crouched by the machine. The silence was heavy. Did that just happen? One of the aides whispered. Lyra couldn't speak. She could only stare at the man who had unknowingly shattered centuries of belief in biology. Because no non-Zinari had ever triggered a soul mark. Never. Not once in recorded history. She finally found her voice. Who are you? The man blinked at her, confused. Eli? Eli Carter. I'm just here to fix the system. He looked around, clearly unsure why everyone had stopped moving. Lyra's heart pounded. This wasn't possible. And yet, her soul mark continued to glow. The moment Lyra's soul mark flared to life, everything changed. Back on the Zinari diplomatic ship orbiting Earth, scientists were already running tests. The entire delegation had returned in silence, eyes flickering between Lyra and Eli like they were looking at something impossible. Eli, for his part, was still trying to understand what had just happened. I didn't do anything, he kept saying. But no one seemed to hear him. They led him into a sterile lab filled with glowing screens and strange devices. He sat on a cold metal chair while two Zinari researchers scanned him from head to toe. One looked excited. The other looked deeply worried. Lyra stood nearby, arms crossed, her soul mark still burning softly against her skin. It's not fading, she whispered. One of the scientists turned to her slowly. No, it isn't. That only made things worse. In Zinari culture, once a soul mark activated, there was no denying the bond. It was biological truth, spiritual fate. There were even laws about what must happen next. Formal meetings, bonding rituals, family introductions, but none of that applied to humans. Humans weren't even considered compatible with Zinari biology. Their genetic code was different. Their culture was chaotic. And yet here was proof that defied centuries of belief. Eli wasn't just compatible, he was the one. As the scans continued, the results grew stranger. His blood showed traces of unknown proteins. His brain activity spiked in ways that mirrored Xenari telepathic patterns, even though humans weren't supposed to have any psychic ability at all. One researcher whispered something under their breath. Could he be? Lyra leaned forward. What? Could he be what? The scientist hesitated. There's an old myth, from before recorded history, about a lost race called the Starborn. They were said to have seeded life across the galaxy, touching many species, including ours. Lyra frowned. And you think Eli is related to them? We don't know, the scientist admitted. But his DNA has markers we've never seen, something ancient, something powerful. Meanwhile, Eli was growing restless. Look, I get that this is weird, he said, holding up his hands. I really do, but I'm just a mechanic. I fix machines. I don't belong in some alien lab getting poked and prodded. Lyra stepped closer, studying him. You're not just a mechanic, she said quietly. You're different. Eli gave her a tired smile. Ain't we all? She didn't laugh. She couldn't, because deep down she felt it too. Something about being near him felt right. Like a missing piece had clicked into place. It scared her. Her whole life had been planned. A future of duty and tradition, a marriage arranged by her family, a path set long before she was born. But now, her heart beat differently when he walked into the room. Now, her people looked at her like she'd broken the universe. Later that night, after the tests ended, Lyra found Eli sitting outside the ship, staring up at the stars. They won't let me leave without answers, he said without turning. She sat beside him. They want to study you, to understand how this happened. He sighed. I'm not some experiment, you know. I know, she said softly. But to us, this is huge. Impossible even. He looked at her then, his eyes kind and tired. Then maybe your impossible needs to change. For the first time since her mark had lit up, Lyra smiled. Maybe he was right, because the truth was clear now, whether anyone liked it or not. Eli Carter had activated her soul mark, and nothing would ever be the same again. The days that followed, Eli Carter became something more than just a human mechanic. He became a mystery. Xenari scientists ran every test they could think of. They scanned his brain, mapped his DNA, even checked for hidden implants or alien tech. But nothing explained what had happened, and what was still happening, because Lyra's soul mark hadn't faded, not once. It pulsed softly on her skin like a heartbeat, brighter when Eli was near, dimmer when he wasn't. It was as if the bond between them was alive. And it wasn't just affecting Lyra. Others began to notice strange things happening around Eli. A Xenari guard who had been angry and tense all morning suddenly calmed down when Eli passed by. A young researcher who had been crying over a broken heart stopped sobbing the moment Eli sat beside her. No one could explain it. But it kept happening. Lyra watched him carefully. She saw how he spoke to people, not with authority, but with honesty. How he listened more than he talked. How he always tried to help even when no one asked. One day, during a minor emergency in the lab, a machine overheated and sparked. Everyone froze in panic, except Eli. He moved fast, turned off the power, and grabbed a fire suppressor before anyone else could react. When it was over, everyone looked at him like he'd done something heroic. He just shrugged. Just fixing? Stuff, he said. That night, Lyra confronted him. You're not normal, she said. Eli gave her a tired smile. Nope, never claimed to be. She crossed her arms. But you don't even realize it, do you? You don't know what you are. Eli sat down on the edge of a bench outside the ship, looking up at the stars. I've always felt different, he admitted. Since I was a kid. People calm down when I'm around, things work better, like the world just listens. Lyra sat beside him. There's an old Earth story, she said, about humans being touched by starlight, About a lost race that came from the sky and planted life across the galaxy. Eli raised an eyebrow. You mean like aliens seeding planets? She nodded. Some believe your species might have inherited something from them. A spark. A gift. Eli chuckled. Sounds like a bedtime story. It did, she said. Until now. The next day, they visited a small human archive, a dusty library hidden beneath a forgotten university. There, among crumbling books and broken screens, they found records of ancient myths, legends of starborn, bloodlines, humans who could heal with touch, who could sense emotions like sound, who could bring peace to war-torn lands, simply by standing in the middle of them. One old text described such a person as a bridge between worlds. Lyra looked at Eli. That's you? He shook his head. No, I'm just me. But deep down, he knew something was changing. Back on the Zinari capital ship, tensions were rising. News of the human who activated a soul mark had spread. Some called him a miracle. Others called him a threat. And then there were those who wanted him gone. Late one night, as Eli slept in his quarters, two figures slipped aboard the ship. They wore black uniforms and carried silent weapons. They weren't here to talk. They were here to kill. But as they approached Eli's room, something strange happened. Their hands trembled. Their hearts pounded. Then, without warning, they collapsed. Not from pain, but from emotion. Sadness, regret, fear, like something inside them had been unlocked. They curled into balls on the floor, whispering apologies to each other. Minutes later, Lyra and security arrived. They stared at the unconscious attackers, then at Eli, who stood in the doorway wide awake. I didn't touch them, he said quietly. Lyra stepped closer. They couldn't hurt you, she whispered. They just couldn't. Eli looked at the men, pity in his eyes. I didn't want this, he said. I never asked for any of it. But it chose you anyway, Lyra replied. And in that moment, both of them understood. Eli wasn't just some lucky human who matched a Zinari girl. He was something more, something ancient. And the universe was about to find out. News of Eli's awakening spread fast. Across the galaxy, some saw him as a miracle. Others saw him as a threat. Among those who feared what he represented was a powerful group known as the Purist Circle, a secret network of leaders, scientists, and warriors from several species, who believed that mixing between races would weaken the natural order. They had watched quietly as soul marks began to activate between different species. They had stayed silent when Lyra's mark lit up for a human. But now they acted. It started with whispers, then came the attacks. First, a lab on Zinari Prime exploded without warning. Scientists studying Eli's DNA were inside. None survived. Next, a transport carrying records of the Starborn Vault vanished during re-entry over Earth. Someone wanted the truth buried. And then came the kidnapping attempt. Eli had been resting in his quarters aboard the Zinari research ship Vera's Light, unaware of the danger closing in. Lyra had sensed it first. Her soul mark burned hotter than usual, a sign something was wrong. She stood outside Eli's door, heart pounding. Then she heard it. Footsteps. Too many. She stepped back just as the door was blown inward. Black uniformed soldiers poured in, weapons raised. Eli barely had time to roll off. The bed before blaster fire scorched the wall behind him. Don't hurt him, one of them shouted. Take him alive. Lyra didn't think. She moved. With a scream of fury, she launched herself at the nearest soldier, striking fast and hard. She was trained, not as a warrior, but enough to know how to fight when needed. The soldier staggered back, stunned by her speed. More followed. Eli ducked under a wild swing and slammed his elbow into a second attacker's gut. He wasn't strong like a fighter, but he was quick, and he knew how to stay out of harm's way. But they were outnumbered. One of the soldiers pulled out a stun baton and swung at Lyra. She dodged once, twice, then he hit her. She fell with a cry. Eli saw red. He screamed her name and lunged forward, and then something strange happened. The moment he reached for her, the room filled with light. Not bright like fire, soft, warm, like sunlight after a storm. The soldiers froze. Their weapons trembled in their hands. Then, one by one, they dropped to their knees. Tears ran down their faces. One sobbed. "I don't want to fight," another whispered. "Why do I feel like this?" Eli didn't understand what was happening, but he felt it too. A deep pull in his chest, like he was touching something inside them all. Something real. Something broken. He looked at Lyra, still, dazed on the floor, then at the soldiers. "No more," he said softly. Just 2 words, but they carried weight. The soldiers dropped their weapons. Some crawled away, some sat silently. One even reached out and touched Lyra's hand. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Security arrived minutes later. They found the room quiet. No one fighting. Only Eli helping Lyra to her feet. Only soldiers sitting in silence, confused and crying. Later, Dr. Voss studied the footage. "There's no record of anything like this," he said. "They weren't drugged. No mind control. It was like your presence made them feel everything they've been hiding." Eli shook his head. "I didn't do anything." "You did," Lyra said. "You stopped them, without hurting anyone." Eli looked at the soldiers being taken away. "They weren't evil," he said. "They were just afraid, and that scared him more than anything. Because if fear could drive people to attack someone just for being different, what else could it make them do?" Back in private quarters, Lyra sat beside Eli, her soul mark glowing softly against her skin. "You're not just special," she said. "You're dangerous." He gave her a tired smile. "I don't want to be." "But you are," she said. "And now, they'll come again." He nodded. "I know." Outside, the stars shone bright, but somewhere in the dark, enemies were already planning. Planning to stop the man who made hate feel wrong. Planning to silence the boy who changed fate itself. After escaping a second assassination attempt by unknown forces, Eli and Lyra were forced to flee from Zanari space. With the help of a few trusted allies, including a rogue scientist named Dr. Kalen Voss, they made their way to a secret location buried deep beneath the surface of Earth. It was a place spoken of only in myths, a place known as the Starborn Vault. Hidden under layers of rock and time, the vault had been sealed for thousands of years. No human records officially confirmed its existence. Only old stories whispered about it. Tales of glowing beings who came from the stars, gave life to many worlds, and vanished without a trace. Now, standing before the massive stone door covered in strange symbols, Eli felt something stir inside him. He reached out. The moment his fingers touched the stone, the symbols lit up, not with fire or electricity, but with light. A soft hum filled the air. Then, with a deep groan, the door opened. Inside, the chamber was unlike anything they had ever seen. The walls shimmered like starlight trapped in glass. Strange machines floated in midair, humming gently. And at the center of the room stood a tall crystal pillar, pulsing like a heartbeat. Dr. Voss whispered, in awe, This is real." Eli stepped forward slowly. He didn't know how, but he understood what to do. He placed both hands on the crystal. A wave of light shot through the room. Then, voices, not loud, but clear, filled their minds. "We are the first seeders. We planted life across the stars. We gave birth to many species, many worlds. Among them, we left a spark, a being capable of awakening destiny, a bridge between all peoples. That being is you." Eli staggered back, breathing hard. Lyra caught him before he could fall. "What did you see?" she asked. Eli looked at her, eyes wide with understanding. "They weren't gods," he said softly. "They were just advanced. They traveled, the galaxy seeding life wherever they went. Humans weren't an accident, we were part of the plan." Dr. Voss stared at the crystal. If this is true, he said, then humans carry something no other species does. Eli nodded. A connection, he said. A power to link with others, to understand, to heal, to change fate itself. Lyra's soul mark glowed brighter than ever, because now everything made sense. Humans weren't just another race among many. They were the missing piece. The key that could unlock unity between species thought incompatible. The reason her soul mark had activated, not because Eli was Zinari, but because he was something even older, something meant to be found. Back on the ship, the team studied the data downloaded from the vault. It contained genetic maps, historical records, and warnings, ancient messages left behind by the Starborn. One line stood out. When the darkness rises again, only the convergence point can stop it. Lyra looked at Eli. That's you, she said. Eli shook his head. I'm just a guy who fixes things. But that's exactly why, she replied. You don't break the world. You fix it. As the days passed, more reports came in from across the galaxy. New cases of mixed species soul marks activating, Zinari bonding with humans, Calithians with Terrans, even Virex hybrids showing new abilities. Something was changing, and it started with Eli. But not everyone welcomed the change. In the shadows, powerful groups began to move. Factions that feared what Eli represented. Some saw him as a threat to tradition. Others believed he would bring chaos. And then there were those who wanted to control him, to use his power, to silence it. One night, as Eli and Lyra walked outside under the stars, she turned to him. Do you regret it? She asked. Finding out what you are? Eli looked up at the sky. No, he said. I just wish I'd known sooner. She smiled. You're not alone anymore, she said. You have me. He took her hand. And I always will. Above them, the stars twinkled like silent witnesses. History had changed, and it had changed because of a human mechanic, who turned out to be something far more. Eli Carter had become more than just a human mechanic. He was now a symbol of hope, of unity, and to some of fear. Across the stars, old alliances were breaking. New ones were forming. Species that had never spoken before began sharing stories about strange new connections. Soul marks activating. Between different races, something once thought impossible. But not everyone welcomed this change. In the heart of the Zinari capital, the High Council gathered in secret. Some saw Eli as a miracle. Others saw him as a threat. The balance is shifting, one counselor warned. If humans can awaken our soul marks, what happens to our traditions? Our future? Another voice rose. Or maybe, it's time our future changed. Meanwhile, on Earth, Lyra and Eli worked with Dr. Voss and their growing team of allies. They trained others who had begun showing signs of awakening, humans and aliens alike. Some could heal faster. Some could feel emotions like music. A few even started hearing thoughts like whispers in the wind. Eli didn't call them soldiers. He called them bridges. We're not here to conquer, he said during one meeting. We're here to connect, to remind the galaxy that we're all part of the same story. But not everyone wanted peace. One night, a fleet dropped out of hyperspace above Mars. They came without warning. Dark ships, sleek and silent. No flags, no names, just death. They opened fire on a human Zinari research station orbiting the red planet. Dozens died in seconds. Lyra watched the attack from the command center on Earth. Her soul mark burned hotter than ever. They're coming for him, she whispered. Eli stood beside her, eyes cold with resolve. No, he said. They're coming for what I represent. Within hours, the galaxy knew what had happened. Some called it an act of war. Others called it a warning. The truth was worse. This was only the beginning. As fear spread, so did action. Zinari warriors joined human pilots in defense drills. Calethian diplomats offered aid. Even the normally neutral Virex sent ships to protect key worlds. Species that had never fought together were now standing side by side, because they understood something the attackers didn't. Eli wasn't just one man. He was proof that the galaxy could be better, that it could be united. The final battle began over Mars. The enemy fleet returned, bigger this time, more powerful. They demanded Eli surrender. He refused, so they attacked. Ships clashed in the skies. Lasers lit up the dark. Explosions bloomed like deadly flowers across the void. Lyra flew at Eli's side in a Zenari fighter, weaving through enemy fire. "Stay close," she shouted over comms. "I always am," he replied, but the tide was turning against them. Then, something incredible happened. On the battlefield, Eli stepped onto the bridge of his ship and closed his eyes. He reached out, not with weapons, but with something deeper, with feeling, with connection. His soul mark flared so brightly it lit up the entire deck. And then, every soulmate bond across the battlefield reacted. Zenari pilots felt the hearts of their human co-pilots. Calithians heard the fears of their Terran allies. Even enemies paused, confused, shaken. For a moment, hate stopped. Fear faded, and understanding took its place. Eli's voice echoed through every channel, every mind. "You don't have to fight. You don't have to fear. We are not enemies. We are all children of the stars." The effect was instant. Enemy ships hesitated. Some powered down their weapons. Others turned away. The battle didn't end in fire. It ended in silence. A silence filled with something far stronger than war. Understanding. Victory wasn't won with weapons. It was won with truth. Back on Earth, the galaxy watched the footage. Millions saw the light, and millions more felt something inside them begin to wake. Not because of weapons or threats, but because hearts had changed. After the battle, above Mars, the galaxy began to heal. Slowly, quietly, like a flower growing through stone. Eli Carter stood not as a king, not as a soldier, but as something new, a symbol. The first human to awaken destiny in others. The first to prove that love, unity, and understanding could cross species, cultures, and even stars. He wasn't alone. Lyra stood beside him, always. Her soul mark still glowed, brighter than ever. Not just on her skin, but in her heart. She had been raised to believe fate was written in biology, that destiny was fixed by blood. Now, she knew better. Fate could be rewritten. Destiny could be chosen. And hers had chosen Eli. Together they traveled, across the stars, visiting planets once divided by fear and tradition. They met with leaders, warriors, scientists, and children. Everywhere they went, they shared the same message. We are not so different. We share the same sky, and we can build the same future. In time, new schools were built, not just for one species, but for many. The Institute of Convergence, founded by Eli and Lyra, became a place where young minds learned not only science and history, but empathy, connection, and hope. For the first time in galactic history, mixed species soul marks became common. Zenari bonded with humans, Calithians with Virex. Even the cold-hearted Draelac opened their hearts to love beyond their kind. It was a quiet revolution, one born not from war, but from one man who believed in people. Back on Earth, Eli returned often. He never forgot where he came from. He walked the streets of his old town, greeted by neighbors who once saw him as just a quiet mechanic. Now, they called him Hope. Sometimes, he would sit on the roof of his childhood home, looking up at the stars. Lyra would join him. They would talk about everything, the past, the future, the strange journey that brought them together. One night she asked him, "Do you miss being normal?" Eli smiled. "I was never normal," he said. "I just didn't know what I was yet." She leaned against him. "And now?" He looked out at the stars. "Now I know I'm exactly where I'm meant to be." Down below, the world was changing. Children played together no matter where they were born. Ships from different worlds landed side by side, and across the galaxy, broadcasts played clips of the battle above Mars, not to remember the fight, but to remember the moment hate stopped, because of one human, because of one Zenari girl, because of love. Years passed. The galaxy grew stronger, and Eli and Lyra remained at its heart. Not rulers, not gods, just two beings who proved that even the most impossible things could happen, that love could break barriers, that peace could be built, not with force, but with understanding. On the final page of the official record of those years, one line was written,